Vasishta continued, "He in whom the contact of sharp weapons and the contact of a naked woman produce the same experience, he is established in the supreme state. One should diligently engage oneself in spiritual practice until one reaches a state in which one's contact with the objects provokes the same reaction that it would if one were asleep. The knower of the self is totally unaffected by mental illness or psychological distress, although they might be regarded as mentally ill. The contact of sharp weapons and the contact of a naked woman are quite different experiences, and one's behaviour in regard to them is quite different. The impression given is that the sage is somehow immobile, somehow inert, and this isn't the case. It's to do with mental attitude. The sage does not rate one experience as better than the other. The sage does not pursue one experience at the expense of another. Everything is accepted as it happens and responded to appropriately. So in the case of contact with sharp weapons, it's a good idea to avoid that. And in the case of contact with a naked woman, it's a good idea to show proper appreciation. But once it's over, it's over. There's no dwelling on either of these. It's all regarded as if you've just woken up from a dream. No matter what experiences you've had in a dream, you tend to be able to put them aside. We put them all together under the category of dream. So no matter what variety of experience we've had in the dream, after we've woken up from the dream, we say it was a dream, just a dream, thereby implying that all the experiences we had in the dream were of the same quality. And this is the state of the sage. It provokes the same reaction that it would if one were asleep. The sage is completely indifferent to whether it's a sharp weapon or contact of a naked woman. There will be physiological reactions, there will be mental, emotional and physical reactions, but the sage is established beyond that, and whatever upset either of these cause, and the sage can get upset, will have emotional reactions. The sage will be knocked from his equilibrium, from his equanimity. But we'll come back to it. We'll come back to that equilibrium, that equanimity soon after. Just as poison, when swallowed by one, produces physical ailment without losing its identity as poison, the self becomes the jiva without abandoning its nature as the self or undivided consciousness. So the analogy here seems a little obscure. Whenever you consume something, it gets transformed. When you eat food, it gets broken down. It gets transformed into nutrients and waste. Poison, when swallowed by one, causes illness. I think the idea is that it remains poison until it passes through the system. And in this way, the self is always the self. Even so, consciousness takes on the nature of unconsciousness or inertia. And inertia is the quality of being inert. Something seems to have arisen in Brahman, though it is in fact non-different from Brahman. Poison, without ceasing to be poison, becomes poisonous in the body. In the same way, the self is neither born nor does it die, and from another point of view, it comes into being and dies. Depends what the consciousness is identifying with. If it's identifying with its notions of mortality, with the body and so on, with the mind and body, then it comes into being and it dies. But if the self is identified with its own nature, then it's beyond that. The self is completely uncoloured by any notions of personal identity. Just as Newtonian space is unaffected by whatever it contains. Only when one's intelligence does not get drowned in objective perception is one able to cross the ocean of samsara as if it were the footprint of a calf. It is not achieved with the help of God or by other means. Objective perception is perception of objects. This ocean can be crossed in an instant, as if it were the footprint of a calf. It's not a long trek to cross this ocean. It's something that can happen right here, right now. The attention turns from notions of objects to its own nature. In the self which is omnipresent and which dwells in all, how can the mind or the ego sense arise at all? There is neither good nor evil anywhere to anyone at any time. There is neither pleasure nor pain, neither adversity nor prosperity. No one is the doer, and no one is the enjoyer of anything. And again, this depends on where the attention is. If you're operating socially, if you're engaged socially, then there's certain behaviours which are appropriate and inappropriate. We can talk about adversity, prosperity, pleasure, pain, good and evil. But these are all parts of the conditioned mind. And they all have their own reality. It's a relative reality though. And when we're engaged in that relative reality, that conventional reality, we operate in these terms. But it's not reality, it's not fundamental reality. Fundamental reality is beyond all these. It's beyond all these notions. And in terms of personal practice, it's quite useful to look at this. We don't like to think there's no such thing as good and evil. There's no such thing as right and wrong. This is fuel for the psychopath. But let's go beyond these fears and anxieties. Let's go beyond the potential for psychotic behaviour. And let's realise the truth of this statement. Realise the freedom that this statement brings. Realise the freedom that this understanding brings. We don't have to be worried, we don't have to be concerned about anything. Ultimately, we don't need to let our sense of being be infiltrated by anxieties, by fears, by concerns. Our state is ultimately free, but we don't want to acknowledge that because we think it's too dangerous. We've got to have right and wrong. We've got to have understandings of good and evil. We've got to have actions and responsibility for your actions. We've got to have all that. No, we don't. All that is put on us. It's put on us and it cramps us, it constricts us, it restricts us, it limits us. It completely obfuscates the true freedom which lies at the heart of our being. So let's get in touch with that once again.